The neon lights of the security monitors cast a blue glow across Sam Miller's weathered face, deepening the lines etched by 68 years of life. Crouched behind a lab bench, he gripped his old service pistol with steady hands that had once stitched together wounded soldiers on Middle Eastern battlefields. His breath came in controlled, measured intervals, the breathing of a man who had faced death before and made peace with its proximity. Through the glass partition, he could see the squadron of heavily armed men moving methodically through the corridor, their tactical lights sweeping across the polished floor. Sam glanced at the woman beside him, her skin emitting a faint luminescence that pulsed like circuitry beneath flesh. A thin rivulet of silvery fluid trickled from a wound on her arm, definitely not human blood. The radio on the security team leader's vest crackled to life. Target location confirmed. Terminate the old man and capture Subject X alive. Sam's jaw tightened as he checked his ammunition. The woman's mercury gray eyes met his, a question in them that needed no words. Sam Miller had fought in 3 wars across 2 continents, had seen humanity at its worst and still managed to find its best. "I've never abandoned anyone who needed help," he whispered, his voice a graveled rumble, human or otherwise. The metal door slammed open, filling the room with blinding light and the thunder of tactical boots. 6 hours earlier, Sam Miller's night had begun like any other in his 15 years as security at Titan Research Institute. The sprawling complex rose from the Arizona desert like a monument to human innovation, or human arrogance depending on who you asked. Sam preferred the latter description, though he kept that opinion to himself as he made his rounds through the sterile corridors. The midnight shift suited him. Fewer people meant fewer condescending looks from scientists half his age who saw only a relic in a uniform, not the decorated combat medic who had saved lives with nothing but a field kit and sheer determination. The security desk hummed with the soft electronic pulse of monitoring systems as Sam logged his first checkpoint. The young guards called him Old Man Miller, behind his back sometimes to his face, but he didn't mind. Pride had been one of the first casualties of his advancing years, followed closely by the illusion that the world made sense. What remained was a stubborn dedication to duty and a nagging feeling that something at Titan wasn't right. That feeling had been growing stronger for months, ever since he caught whispers about Project Pandora from executives who thought night security guards were invisible. Sam's arthritic fingers traced the outline of the worn leather wallet in his pocket, a ritual that grounded him in moments of unease. Inside was a faded photograph of his special medical unit in Desert Storm, 8 young men standing tall in the punishing Kuwait sun. Only Sam remained alive today. The weight of surviving when others didn't was a familiar burden, one that had shaped his solitary existence in a small apartment filled with books on medicine and military history rather than family photos. The night stretched before him long and quiet, broken only by the rhythmic sound of his boots on polished floors and the occasional hum of equipment behind locked doors. Sam completed his circuit of the East Wing, using his keycard to access the restricted biochemical research section, Level B, where even daytime security rarely ventured. His presence here wasn't strictly required, but Sam had learned long ago that following only the letter of orders often meant missing what was important. The whispers about Project Pandora had mentioned this section specifically. The first indication that something was wrong came at 1:17 a.m. A subtle flutter on the motion detection grid in Lab 12, a section that should have been completely vacant. Any other security guard might have called it in immediately, but 30 years of military experience had taught Sam the value of information gathered personally. He tapped the security camera feed, frowning, when it showed only an empty, pristine laboratory. Too pristine, too still. The kind of stillness that came from a looped feed rather than live footage. Sam's pulse quickened slightly, not with fear, but with the familiar clarity that came with potential danger. He muted his radio and moved toward Lab 12, recalling the facility layout he had memorized during his first week. The service corridor would provide approach without being seen, a tactic he'd learned clearing buildings in Fallujah, not guarding research facilities in Arizona. Old habits from dangerous times had a way of becoming useful again. The service corridor was narrow, designed for maintenance rather than comfort. Sam moved with surprising agility for his age, his footsteps nearly silent, another remnant of military training that had never faded. Through the small reinforced window in the access door, he could see movement inside the laboratory. A figure in dark clothing moved with purpose among the equipment, definitely not a member of the cleaning staff. Sam watched, evaluating, remembering the security protocols for unauthorized intrusion. Protocol demanded immediate reporting and lockdown. Sam's instincts, honed in environments where protocols often got people killed, suggested observation first. The security detail assigned to the main entrance would be making their rounds now, 4 men, all former military but young, trained to follow procedure rather than instinct. Sam heard their boots on the tiles, the casual conversation about weekend plans. He remained motionless in the shadow of the corridor as they passed their flashlights, sweeping perfunctorily across the hall. When they rounded the corner, Sam eased the service door open and slipped into the laboratory's secondary storage area. From this vantage point, partially concealed behind tall storage units, Sam could clearly see the intruder, a woman moving with fluid precision among the research stations. What struck him immediately wasn't her presence but her appearance. Her skin had a subtle luminescence like moonlight through water, with faint patterns that resembled circuit pathways visible beneath the surface. Her movements were too precise, too efficient, studied but not natural. When she reached for a sealed container on a high shelf, her sleeve pulled back to reveal more of the circuitry-like patterns extending up her arm. She extracted what looked like a crystal cylinder about the size of a prescription bottle, glowing with a soft blue light that illuminated her face. In that glow, Sam saw features of striking symmetry, beautiful but with an uncanny quality that raised the hairs on his neck. Not quite human. The woman examined the cylinder, relief washing over her features as she carefully secured it in a specialized case at her belt. Whatever she had found, it was precisely what she had come for. Sam weighed his options. The security team would be back in approximately 12 minutes. Procedure dictated that he call this in immediately, but something held him back, the same instinct that had saved his life in war zones. There was more happening here than a simple theft. The woman's otherworldly appearance, the targeted nature of her intrusion, the whispers about Project Pandora connections formed in Sam's mind, vague but disturbing. He stepped forward, his service pistol held low but ready. "That doesn't belong to you," he said quietly, his voice carrying the calm authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed in crisis situations. The woman spun toward him, her movement almost too fast to follow, mercury gray eyes widening in surprise. For a split second, the circuitry patterns beneath her skin flared brighter, a physiological response to shock that no human could replicate. Her voice, when she spoke, carried an accent Sam couldn't place, melodic, but with hard edges. "You should not be here, human. Walk away now." There was no threat in her tone, only a strange kind of concern that puzzled him. Sam maintained his position, weapon still lowered but ready. "Neither should you. But here we are." He nodded toward the cylinder in her case. "What is that, and why are you taking it?" Instead of answering, the woman tilted her head slightly, studying him with an intensity that felt like being scanned. "You are different," she finally said. "Your cellular structure has been altered." "Interesting." Before Sam could process this bizarre statement, the woman's attention shifted abruptly to the doorway. "They're coming. Military-grade weapons. You should hide." Sam heard it too now. The rapid deployment of the facility's armed response team, not the regular security patrol. Heavy boots, tactical gear. The distinctive sound of automatic weapons being readied. But how had they been alerted? He'd triggered no alarm, made no call. The woman looked at him with something like pity. "They're not coming for me, Guardian. They've been waiting for me. The moment I accessed the container, silent protocols activated." She gestured to a nearly invisible sensor on the case she'd taken from. Through the laboratory windows, Sam caught sight of the response team leader, a face he hadn't seen in 15 years but would never forget. Colonel Marcus Reed, his former commanding officer from Desert Storm, now apparently heading Titan's security operations. Reed had aged, his once dark hair, now silver, but his bearing remained unmistakable, rigid, authoritative, dangerous. This was no standard security response. This was a military operation disguised as corporate security. "They will kill you," the woman said matter-of-factly. "You've seen too much already." The certainty in her voice chilled Sam more than any threat could have. In that moment, the pieces aligned in his mind. Project Pandora, the woman's inhuman qualities, Reed's presence, the secret research levels that even senior staff rarely visited. Whatever Titan was involved in went far beyond conventional research. The armed team reached the laboratory door, Reed's voice cleared through the reinforced glass. Secure the specimen, terminate any resistance. The cold precision in those words confirmed the woman's warning. These men weren't here to arrest an intruder. They were here to eliminate witnesses and capture the woman. Sam made his decision in the space between heartbeats, decades of moral certainty, overriding years of institutional loyalty. He moved with surprising speed for his age, grabbing the woman's arm and pulling her toward the back of the laboratory where the emergency evacuation route connected to the maintenance tunnels. This way, he whispered, just as the main door burst open. Sam fired 2 shots at the laboratory's main power junction, plunging the room into darkness, except for emergency lights and the faint glow emanating from the woman's skin. Shouts and confusion erupted behind them as Sam led her through the service door he'd entered through. "How do you know about these tunnels?" she asked as they moved rapidly through the narrow corridor. Sam managed a grim smile despite the situation. "Young people think old men are invisible. I've had 15 years to learn every inch of this place while being ignored." They reached a junction where 3 maintenance tunnels converged, the sound of pursuit growing louder behind them. "They'll have the main exits covered," Sam said, orienting himself quickly. "But there's an old ventilation system from before the facility expansion. Leads to the surface about half a mile east." The woman studied him with those mercury eyes, clearly reassessing whatever assumptions she'd made. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Sam didn't have time to examine his own motivations fully. "Because I've spent too many years looking the other way," he answered honestly. "And because Reed giving a kill order means whatever is happening here is wrong." They moved quickly through the dimly lit tunnels, Sam's knowledge of the facility's infrastructure proving invaluable. The woman kept pace effortlessly, despite her injured arm, which continued to leak that strange silvery fluid. "You're bleeding," Sam noted as they paused at another junction. "I was a combat medic. I could help if—" She cut him off with a shake of her head. "Your medical knowledge, while impressive for your species, would not help me. My biology is different." That confirmation of what Sam had already suspected didn't surprise him as much as it should have. The evidence had been there in her appearance, her movements, that strange luminescence beneath her skin. "You're not human," he stated simply, no question in his voice. She met his gaze steadily. "No, and what your people have stolen from mine will destroy your world if they succeed in replicating it." She touched the case at her belt containing the glowing cylinder. "This isn't technology as you understand it. It's life, consciousness, and your military has been trying to weaponize it." The distant sound of boots on metal interrupted their conversation. The pursuit had found their trail. Sam led them down the eastern tunnel, moving as quickly as his aging knees would allow. The woman matched his pace occasionally, glancing at him with an expression that might have been concern. "You're risking your life," she observed. "They will label you a traitor." Sam hadn't allowed himself to think that far ahead, but she was right. The moment he'd helped her, he'd crossed a line there was no returning from. 15 years of building a quiet life gone in an instant of moral clarity. Strangely, he felt no regret, only a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced since his military days. "Wouldn't be the first time I've been on the wrong side of authority for the right reasons," he replied. The tunnel gradually inclined upward, the air growing fresher as they approached the surface. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit faded temporarily. Their hunters had chosen the wrong path at the last junction. "They'll figure it out soon enough," Sam warned as they reached a heavy metal hatch. It took both of them to turn the rusted wheel that secured it, years of disuse making it stubborn. With a groan of protesting metal, the hatch swung upward, revealing a star-filled Arizona sky and the vastness of the desert beyond. They emerged into the cool night air about half a mile from the facility's perimeter fence, exactly where Sam had predicted. The Titan Research Institute glowed in the distance, its modern architecture illuminated against the darkness, beautiful and ominous. Already searchlights were sweeping the perimeter, and the distant sound of vehicles being mobilized carried across the desert. They had minutes at most before the search expanded to their position. The woman looked to the stars with an expression of such profound longing that Sam found himself following her gaze, wondering which point of light might be her home. "My transport is hidden 200 miles from here," she said quietly, "at what your people call the Alpha Contact Point. I must reach it within 48 hours before the spatial window closes." She turned to Sam, her otherworldly eyes reflecting the starlight. "You should go now. Find shelter. Create distance between yourself and what is about to happen." Sam shook his head. They'll have my biometrics flagged in every system within the hour. There's no running from this for me. He gestured to her injured arm, which was now glowing more intensely around the wound. And you won't make it 200 miles without medical attention, even if you're not human. The woman looked at him with new respect, acknowledging the truth of his assessment. You are correct. My self-repair functions are compromised by proximity to your world's electromagnetic fields. A decision crystallized in Sam's mind. I know someone about 20 miles east of here. Former military off the grid, has a garage and keeps to himself. If we can reach him, we might have a chance to treat your injury and figure out transportation. The woman considered this, then nodded once, a decisive movement. Very well, Samuel Miller. It seems our paths are joined for now. She placed her hand on the crystal cylinder at her belt. But you should understand what you're becoming part of. The fate of two worlds now rests on what we do next. Sam was about to respond when the wound on her arm suddenly flared with brilliant light, causing her to stumble. He caught her before she fell, surprised both by how light she was and the strange warmth emanating from her skin. Whatever explanation you've got, it'll have to wait, he said, helping her steady herself. Right now, we need to move. He oriented himself by the stars, another skill from his military days, and began leading them eastward away from the facility and into the vast darkness of the Arizona desert. The desert night enveloped them in its vastness, a canvas of stars overhead, and the shadowed landscape of rock and scrub stretching endlessly around them. Sam set a careful pace, balancing the need for speed with the reality of his age and the woman's injury. They had covered perhaps 2 miles when the distant thrum of helicopters rose above the natural sounds of the desert. Searchlights appeared on the horizon, methodically sweeping the terrain around the Titan facility. They're mobilizing air assets faster than I expected, Sam muttered, guiding them toward a dry wash where the deep shadows would provide temporary cover. The woman watched the distant aircraft with clinical detachment. Your Colonel Reed is thorough. He has hunted me before. This casual revelation stopped Sam short. You've encountered Reed previously. The woman's expression darkened. The one you call Reed was present when they captured me 30 years ago, when they took the Guardian code from my ship. Sam felt a cold realization wash over him. 30 years ago would have been 1905, shortly after his Special Operations Medical Unit had been assigned to a classified recovery mission in the Utah desert. A mission where 6 of his teammates had died under mysterious circumstances that were later classified beyond his clearance level. A mission led by then Major Reed. The incident in Utah, he whispered, pieces of a long-buried puzzle suddenly connecting. That was you. The woman's mercury eyes widened slightly. You were there. It wasn't a question. I remember a human who tried to help rather than capture. They removed him from the containment facility before full memory suppression could be implemented. She studied his face with new intensity. That was you, wasn't it? The healer among soldiers. Before Sam could process this staggering revelation, the helicopters changed course, their searchlights beginning a more focused pattern heading in their direction. They're tracking us, somehow, Sam realized, instinctively checking his pockets. His fingers brushed against his wallet, the familiar leather suddenly feeling wrong. He pulled it out, examining it closely in the starlight, and discovered a nearly invisible seam along the edge. When he pried it open, a micro-thin tracking device was embedded in the leather, likely installed years ago, and activated remotely when he became a person of interest. Clever bastards, he muttered, a mixture of professional admiration and personal betrayal washing through him. They've been keeping tabs on me all along. The woman looked unsurprised. They would never fully trust someone who had been exposed to us, even with altered memories. Sam tossed the wallet and tracker as far as he could in the opposite direction, buying them precious minutes at best. We need to move faster. The wash runs east for about a mile. We follow it, then head for the highway. They continued with greater urgency, the woman moving with increasing difficulty as her wound pulsed with brighter light. The Guardian code is responding to the damage in my biomatrix, she explained, seeing Sam's concerned glance. It's trying to repair me, but without full integration, the process is incomplete. She touched the cylinder at her belt. I need to properly connect with it soon, or my systems will begin cascading failure. Sam's medical instincts kicked in despite the alienness of her physiology. Is there anything I can do to stabilize you until we reach shelter? The woman considered for a moment. Your world has certain minerals that can temporarily buffer the electromagnetic interference, copper, silver, arranged in a specific configuration around the wound. Sam nodded, already thinking of how to fashion such a device from available materials. Once we reach my friend's place, we'll have access to both. The wash began to shallow out, forcing them to leave its protective shadows. The highway was visible in the distance, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the desert landscape, mercifully empty at this late hour. 2 miles to the nearest access point, Sam calculated. Then another 5 along the shoulder to the old service road that leads to Frank's place. The woman nodded, her steps becoming visibly unsteady. They had just reached the flat desert plain leading to the highway when the helicopter searchlights swung back in their direction. The trackers had figured out Sam's deception. With the open terrain offering no cover, discovery was moments away. Sam made a split-second decision, drawing on battlefield medicine principles. Sometimes the painful option was the only viable one. "I need you to trust me," he said urgently, guiding the woman toward a shallow depression in the ground. "And I need your belt." Understanding dawned in her expression. She quickly removed the utility belt, handing it to Sam, along with the precious cylinder. "The Guardian Code cannot fall into their hands again," she said with quiet intensity. "Whatever happens to me, it must reach the Alpha contact point." Sam worked quickly, using the belt in his own jacket to create a makeshift camouflage covering. He positioned the woman in the depression, covering her with the improvised shelter that would mask her body's luminescence from aerial detection. "I'll draw them away," he explained, securing the cylinder in his pocket. "Circle back when it's clear. Military Pursuit Psychology 101, they'll follow the more visible target, especially if it has what they want." The woman caught his wrist with surprising strength. "Samuel Miller, if you are captured with the Guardian Code, they will do worse than kill you. They will unmake you from within." The gravity in her voice made it clear this wasn't hyperbole. Sam allowed himself a grim smile. Wouldn't be the first time someone's tried. He checked that she was adequately concealed, then rose and began moving toward the highway at an angle that would be clearly visible to the approaching helicopters. As expected, the searchlights immediately swung to track him, the aircraft banking sharply to intercept his path. Sam broke into the best run his 68-year-old legs could manage, heading for a rocky outcropping that would provide temporary cover. He reached the rocks just as the helicopter thundered overhead, its downdraft whipping dust into blinding clouds. A spotlight pinned him in its harsh glare as a voice boomed from a speaker. "Samuel Miller, you are in possession of classified government property. Surrender immediately." Sam pressed himself against the rocks, catching his breath and contemplating the absurdity of his situation. 15 years of quiet security work ended in a helicopter chase across the desert. If it weren't potentially fatal, it would almost be exciting. The helicopter circled tighter, unable to land in the rocky terrain, but unwilling to lose its target. Sam used the momentary stalemate to assess his options. The outcropping connected to a series of larger formations that could provide cover for movement away from the woman's position. If he could lead them on a chase for even 30 minutes, she might recover enough to reach the highway. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all he had. Taking a deep breath, Sam darted from his position to the next cluster of rocks, immediately drawing fire from the helicopter warning shots, but uncomfortably close. The message was clear, the next ones wouldn't miss. He kept moving, using every scrap of cover, leading the pursuit further from where he had hidden the woman. 2 more helicopters, joined the first, their coordinated movements suggesting military precision rather than civilian law enforcement. Whatever the Guardian Code was, Titan and Reed were committing significant resources to retrieving it. Sam had just reached a larger rock formation when pain exploded in his shoulder. A shot had found its mark, not fatal but intensely debilitating. He stumbled into a narrow crevice between boulders, pressing his hand against the wound to stem the bleeding. The crystal cylinder in his pocket had begun glowing more intensely, its blue light visible even through the fabric. As he watched in bewilderment, tendrils of energy seemed to extend from it, reaching toward his injury. Where the light touched his wound, the pain receded. Sam stared in amazement as the bleeding slowed, the damaged tissue visibly responding to whatever energy the cylinder was emitting. "What the hell are you?" he whispered to the object. As if in response, the glow intensified, and for a brief moment, Sam experienced a flood of alien sensations, vast knowledge, memories that weren't his own, glimpses of a civilization beyond human comprehension. Then, as quickly as it had come, the connection faded, leaving him gasping, but with a partially healed wound, and the unsettling certainty that the cylinder contained far more than technology. The helicopters had landed in a clearing beyond the rocks, disgorging teams of armed personnel who began methodically sweeping the area. Sam knew his temporary refuge wouldn't hide him for long. He needed to move again to draw them further from the woman. But as he prepared to leave his shelter, a familiar voice called out from beyond the rocks, controlled, authoritative, bringing back memories of desert warfare and classified operations. Sam Miller, it's been a long time. Colonel Marcus Reed's voice carried easily in the night air. I always knew you remembered more than the treatments allowed. Always knew we should have taken more permanent measures. The casual mention of memory manipulation confirmed Sam's growing suspicions about his fragmented recollections of the Utah incident. You've gotten yourself into something you don't understand, Sam. Something bigger than loyalty to some alien criminal. Sam remained silent, conserving energy and assessing escape routes. Reed continued, his voice moving closer. She's using you, Sam. The specimen isn't a victim. It's an advanced scout for an invasion force. That container it stole, it's a weapon designed to interface with Earth's digital infrastructure. Global systems collapse would follow within hours. The claim didn't align with what Sam had just experienced from the cylinder, nor with the woman's desperate efforts to recover it rather than deploy it. We've got your location surrounded, Sam. Reed called, dropping all pretense of negotiation. Thermal imaging shows you in that rock formation. You're bleeding, probably going into shock. Be reasonable, hand over the container, and you'll receive medical treatment and a fair hearing. The offer was delivered with practiced sincerity that didn't reach Reed's eyes, visible now as he stepped into view about 30 yards from Sam's position. He was flanked by 4 operatives in tactical gear, their weapons trained on the rocks. What happened next occurred so quickly that Sam's brain struggled to process the sequence of events. A blur of movement, the woman appearing seemingly from nowhere. The flash of her skin as the luminescent patterns flared to brilliant life. The operative's weapons discharging in controlled bursts that somehow failed to find their target as she moved with impossible speed. Reed shouting orders that went unheeded as his men fell, not dead, but incapacitated by precisely targeted strikes to neurological points. Then she was beside Sam in the narrow crevice, her mercury eyes glowing with renewed strength. You created a diversion, she said, something like admiration in her voice. At great personal risk. Before Sam could respond, she placed her hand over his wounded shoulder. A warm sensation spread from her touch, accelerating the partial healing the cylinder had initiated. The Guardian code recognized you, she observed. It attempted to interface. Interesting. Reed was the only one still standing, his sidearm aimed at their position with the steady hand of a career soldier. Step away from the human Lyra, he called, using a name Sam hadn't heard before. Your diplomatic status was revoked the moment you infiltrated a secure facility. The woman Lyra tensed at the use of her name. There was no diplomacy, Reed, only capture and experimentation. Your government promised sanctuary and exchanged it for imprisonment. With surprising gentleness, she helped Sam to his feet. Can you run? She asked quietly. Sam tested his partially healed shoulder, finding the pain manageable. Well enough, he confirmed. Lyra nodded, then addressed Reed again. The Guardian code is returning with me, Colonel. Your Project Pandora ends tonight. She turned to Sam. When I move, stay close to me. The code's energy field will extend to you while we're in proximity. Before Sam could ask what she meant, Lyra surged forward with that same impossible speed. Reed fired multiple shots, each seeming to curve away from her as though deflected by an invisible barrier. Sam followed in her wake, expecting to feel bullets impact at any moment, but instead experiencing only a strange tingling sensation as projectiles veered away from him as well. They cleared the rocks and sprinted toward the desert beyond Reed's furious shouts, fading behind them. How are you doing this? Sam gasped as they ran, his aged lungs burning with the exertion. Lyra's response was clipped, focused. The Guardian code creates a probability field. Low-level reality manipulation. Temporary effect with the code only partially activated. Whatever that meant, Sam was grateful for the protection as they put distance between themselves and Reed's forces. The woman's strength and speed seemed restored, though the wound on her arm still pulsed with light. They ran for what felt like hours, but was likely only 20 minutes, finally slowing when they reached the highway. No vehicles were visible in either direction, the asphalt road eerily empty under the starlight. Your diversion was tactically sound, Lyra said, her breathing barely elevated despite their sprint. But the tracking device was only their primary method. They implanted a secondary one during your employment medical screening. She pointed to a spot behind Sam's ear. Subdermal, military grade. Sam's hand went reflexively to the spot, feeling nothing but normal skin. How do you know that? Lyra's expression was grim. Because they did the same to me during my captivity. It's how they found me after I escaped 15 years ago. The timeline aligned perfectly with when Sam had been hired at Titan. Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. His hiring hadn't been random. He'd been placed there perhaps as unwitting bait for when Lyra eventually returned for the Guardian Code. Can you remove it? He asked, the implications of being permanently trackable settling heavily on him. Lyra studied the spot with those unsettling, mercury eyes. Not here, not without proper tools and a better understanding of how it's integrated with your nervous system. Removing it incorrectly could cause significant neural damage. She looked eastward toward their destination. Your friend, the one with the garage, would he have medical equipment, precision tools? Sam thought of Frank Wilson, former Special Forces medical specialist turned mechanical genius. He might. Frank has unusual hobbies. He checked his watch, nearly 3 a.m. They had been on the run for less than 2 hours, but it felt like a lifetime. We should keep moving, 5 miles along this road, then we turn onto an unmarked dirt track. Frank doesn't appreciate unannounced visitors, but he owes me from Baghdad. They set off along the highway's shoulder, moving at a sustainable pace. The desert night had turned cold, the temperature dropping, as it always did in these hours before dawn. Sam felt it in his joints, reminders of age that no amount of adrenaline could fully overcome. Lyra walked beside him, her strange luminescence dimmed to almost nothing, now making her appear almost human in the darkness. You called it the Guardian Code, Sam said, breaking the silence between them. The cylinder, what is it really? Lyra was quiet for so long that he thought she might not answer. When she did, her voice carried a weight of history and responsibility that transcended her appearance of relative youth. The Guardian Code is not an object, Samuel Miller. It is the distilled consciousness of my people, the collective wisdom memory, an evolutionary path of the Stellaris civilization encoded into a quantum biological matrix. She touched the spot where the cylinder rested in Sam's pocket. What you carry is the last hope of my world, sent here for safekeeping when the harvesters began their systematic destruction of our star systems. Sam struggled to comprehend the magnitude of what she was describing. You're saying this contains your entire civilization, billions of minds. Lyra shook her head slightly. Not individual minds as you understand them. The essence of what we were, what we learned, what we might become. A seed from which our civilization could regrow if provided the right conditions. Her expression darkened. It was never meant to be separated from its guardian, from me. When your military shot down my ship and took the code, they severed a connection that had existed for centuries. The implications were staggering. Sam had assumed they were dealing with advanced technology, perhaps a weapon, as Reed had claimed. But this, a crystallized civilization, a biological quantum seed of an entire culture, went far beyond anything he had imagined. And Reed Titan, what do they want with it? Lyra's answer was simple and terrifying. Immortality, the ability to transfer consciousness between bodies, the power to determine who lives forever and who remains mortal. They walked in silence as Sam processed this information. The quiet was broken by the distant sound of vehicles approaching from the direction of the Titan facility. They've regrouped faster than I hoped, Sam observed, scanning the terrain for cover. The highway offered little concealment, with only scattered vegetation and shallow ditches alongside it. There's a culvert about half a mile ahead, he recalled. Runs under the road. Might give us temporary shelter. They increased their pace, reaching the drainage culvert just as the distant headlights became visible on the horizon. The concrete tube was large enough for them to crouch inside, though far from comfortable. As they settled into the darkness, Sam felt the cylinder in his pocket grow warmer, its blue glow intensifying again. Lyra noticed it too, her expression growing concern. It's responding to your biological signature, she said quietly. The code should only react this way to a Stellaris Guardian. She studied him with renewed intensity. Unless the exposure 30 years ago, when you treated me before they captured us both. My blood, it must have created a partial compatibility in your DNA. Before Sam could respond to this revelation, the vehicles drew closer. 3 black SUVs moving at high speed along the highway. They slowed as they approached the culvert, bright lights scanning the roadside methodically. Sam and Lyra pressed themselves deeper into the shadows as a spotlight swept across the culvert's entrance. For a tense moment, it seemed certain they would be discovered. Then inexplicably, the light moved on and the vehicles accelerated away. "They didn't see us," Sam whispered in disbelief. Lyra's expression was equally perplexed. "The code," she said, looking at the now brightly glowing cylinder. "It's protecting us more actively than should be possible with only partial activation." She reached for it hesitantly. "May I?" Sam handed her the cylinder, watching as she cradled it with reverence. The moment it touched her hands, the patterns beneath her skin synchronized with its pulsing light, creating a mesmerizing display of interconnected energy. "It remembers me," she said softly, an emotion Sam couldn't identify crossing her features. After all these years of separation, she closed her eyes briefly, communing with the object in some silent way. When she opened them again, there was new urgency in her gaze. "The code has been partially awakened by your military's experiments. They've managed to access fragments of its knowledge enough to begin developing consciousness transfer technology. But they don't understand the consequences." The wound on her arm had begun healing more rapidly with the code in her possession, the silvery fluid receding back into the injury. "What consequences?" Sam asked, though part of him already suspected the answer. Lyra's confirmation was as grim as he feared. "The harvesters. The code's activation creates a specific quantum signature, a beacon. The experiments at Titan have been broadcasting that signature into space for months now. The harvesters will have detected it. They will come." Sam felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert night. "And these harvesters, they're why your civilization needed to preserve itself in that crystal." Lyra nodded solemnly. "They consume advanced civilizations not physically, but technologically and culturally. They harvest knowledge, consciousness, identity, leaving nothing but empty shells behind. My people fought them for centuries before realizing we couldn't win through conventional means." She carefully returned the cylinder to Sam, an act of trust that wasn't lost on him. "The code must reach the Alpha contact point within 41 hours now. A spatial window will open briefly, allowing transmission of the complete code back to the hidden remnants of my people." Her mercury eyes met his, conveying the gravity of what she was asking. "I cannot reach it alone, not with Reed and his forces hunting us, and now perhaps not even without you. The code has formed a partial bond with your altered DNA." Sam Miller, 68-year-old security guard and former combat medic, found himself at a crossroads he could never have anticipated when his shift began hours earlier. On one side lay the comfortable predictability of his remaining years if he somehow survived being labeled a traitor. On the other, a desperate journey with an alien queen to save her civilization and potentially protect Earth from a threat it didn't know was coming. The choice, when viewed through the lens of a lifetime spent healing and protecting others, wasn't really a choice at all. 200 miles to this Alpha contact point, he said, mentally calculating what they would need. "We'll need transportation supplies and a way to disable or remove these tracking devices." He checked his watch again. "Frank's place is 3 miles from here. If we keep a steady pace, we can reach it before dawn." Lyra studied him with those unsettling mercury eyes, something like respect flickering in their depths. "You understand that helping me makes you an enemy of your own government, of your entire species, in their view." Sam allowed himself a weary smile. "Let's just say I've got trust issues with authority figures who order memory wipes and plant tracking devices without consent." He gestured toward the east, where the first faint lightening of the sky hinted at approaching dawn. "Besides, if these harvesters are as bad as you say helping, you might be the only way to save my species from a threat they don't even comprehend." They emerged from the culvert, continuing their journey eastward along the highway shoulder. The night was beginning to fade, stars disappearing one by one as the deep blue of approaching dawn crept across the sky. In the distance, the lights of vehicles appeared again, not the SUVs this time, but the distinctive shape of military transport helicopters, their searchlights methodically sweeping the terrain in an expanding grid pattern. "They're not giving up," Sam observed grimly, "and they're bringing in heavier assets." Lyra's expression remained calm despite the approaching threat. "They can't afford to lose the code again. Not when they've come so close to weaponizing it." She paused, turning to face Sam fully. "There is something you should know before we go further. Something I haven't told you." The seriousness in her tone made Sam stop as well, despite the urgency of their situation. "I'm listening." Lyra's mercury eyes reflected the first hints of dawn light as she delivered her final revelation. I am not simply a guardian of the code, Samuel Miller. I am the last queen of the Stellaris Collective. The code contains not just our civilization's essence, but the genetic template for our entire species' rebirth. She gestured to the wound on her arm, now almost completely healed. And the experiments your people performed on me during my captivity were not just to understand Stellaris biology. They were attempting to create hybrids beings with Stellaris abilities, but human loyalty. The enormity of this disclosure hit Sam like a physical blow. He wasn't just helping an alien escapee, he was aiding the sovereign ruler of an advanced civilization, the key to her entire species' survival. And if what she said about the hybridization experiments was true, it meant Titan's ambitions went far beyond immortality technology. They were attempting to create a new species they could control. As the helicopters drew closer, their searchlights cutting through the fading darkness, Sam made his final decision. Then we'd better make sure you and the code reach that contact point, Your Majesty. The title felt strange on his tongue, but somehow appropriate given what he now knew. Lyra, the Stellaris Queen, inclined her head slightly, accepting his renewed commitment. 200 miles, Samuel Miller. Two civilizations hanging in the balance. Let us hope your friend Frank is as resourceful as you believe. They left the highway at the next junction, heading into the scrubland toward the unmarked dirt road that would lead to Frank Wilson's compound. Behind them, the helicopters continued their methodical search pattern, unaware that their quarry had changed course. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and a race against time that would determine the fate of not one world but two. As the first true light of dawn broke over the Arizona desert, Sam Miller and Queen Lyra of the Stellaris walked side by side toward whatever future awaited them, a future that had irrevocably changed for both in the span of a single night. The pre-dawn light painted the Arizona desert in washes of purple and gold, casting long shadows across the weathered landscape. Sam Miller and Queen Lyra of the Stellaris moved with purpose along the unmarked dirt road that led to Frank Wilson's compound. The distant sound of helicopter rotors had faded behind them, but both knew it was only a temporary reprieve. Sam's shoulder throbbed where the bullet had grazed him, the partial healing from the Guardian Code strange and disconcerting. His mind still reeled from the revelations of the past few hours, alien civilizations, government conspiracies, and his own unwitting role in events spanning decades. We should reach Frank's place in about 15 minutes. Sam said, his voice rough from exertion and the desert's dry air. Fair warning, he doesn't exactly welcome visitors, especially unannounced ones at dawn. Lyra's mercury eyes scanned the horizon, alert for any sign of pursuit. The luminescent patterns beneath her skin had dimmed to near invisibility in the growing light, making her appear almost human, except for those eyes that reflected the sunrise with an otherworldly shimmer. This human, you trust him with knowledge of my existence? Sam considered the question carefully. Frank Wilson had been the medic in another special operations unit during Desert Storm. They'd bonded over the shared experiences and similar disillusionment with military leadership. After returning stateside, Frank had retreated from society, building a compound in the desert where he could live on his own terms. Frank's no friend of the government, Sam finally answered. Lost his entire squad to bad intelligence and worse leadership. Been off the grid for 20 years. If anyone will help us without asking too many questions, it's him. The compound appeared on the horizon, a collection of low buildings surrounded by a high chain-link fence topped with razor wire. Solar panels glinted on every roof, and several wind turbines spun lazily in the morning breeze. As they approached the main gate, Sam noted the subtle indicators of Frank's paranoia cameras, disguised as rocks pressure plates beneath the sand, infrared sensors camouflaged among desert plants. Stay close, he murmured to Lyra. Step exactly where I step. They were 20 yards from the gate when the loudspeaker crackled to life. That's far enough, stranger. The voice was gravel and whiskey hardened by years of solitude. You're trespassing on private property. Sam stopped, raising his hand slightly to show he carried no weapons. Frank, it's Sam Miller. We served together in '91. I patched you up outside Basra when your Humvee hit that IED. A long silence followed the tension palpable in the desert air. Finally, the voice returned, suspicious but less hostile. Sam Miller died 15 years ago in a car accident. At least that's what they told me when I tried to contact him. Sam grimaced at this news, another deception in the web Titan had woven around him. Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated, Frank. Baghdad, 2004. You said you owed me one after I pulled your ass out of that firefight. I'm calling in that marker now. Another long silence, then the mechanical whir of surveillance cameras adjusting their focus. You've got company, Sam, and she doesn't look like the usual desert trash that wanders out here. Sam glanced at Lyra, whose alien nature was subtle but unmistakable in the clear morning light. She's not from around here, Frank, and we've got serious trouble on our heels. Military-grade trouble. The gate began to slide open with a metallic groan. Military-grade trouble? Frank's voice echoed a bitter amusement in his tone, just like old times Miller. As they stepped through the gate, Sam caught sight of defensive positions camouflaged throughout the compound, firing points, escape hatches, even what appeared to be the barrel of a heavy machine gun concealed within a water tower. Frank had been preparing for a siege for 20 years. Today he might finally get one. Frank Wilson waited for them by the main building's entrance, a weathered figure with sun-leathered skin and sharp eyes that missed nothing. His white beard was neatly trimmed, contrasting with the wild tangle of his hair. A shotgun rested casually in his hands, not quite pointed at them, but not pointed away either. You look like hell, Sam, he observed, then shifted his gaze to Lyra. The moment he truly saw her, took in those mercury eyes and the faint patterns beneath her skin, the shotgun raised slightly. What the hell is this? Sam stepped partially between them, his hand still visible. She needs our help, Frank, and if we don't provide it, we're all in deeper trouble than you can imagine. Frank's eyes narrowed, decades of military training evident in his quick assessment of Lyra's non-human characteristics. Government experiment, some kind of augmented soldier. Sam shook his head. Nothing that simple. We need medical supplies, transportation, and a place to lay low while we figure out our next move. I wouldn't be here if I had anywhere else to go. Frank studied them both for a long, tense moment, weighing decades of paranoia against an old battlefield bond. Finally, he lowered the shotgun with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of all his years in isolation. 15 years I thought you were dead, Sam. Then you show up at dawn with... He gestured at Lyra with the shotgun barrel. Whatever the hell she is, this better be one hell of a story. He stepped aside, gesturing them toward the door. Inside, before satellite surveillance picks you up standing in my damn front yard. The interior of Frank's main building was a stark contrast to the weathered exterior, a high-tech operations center with multiple computer screens, communications equipment, and a fully equipped medical area. Maps covered one wall, marking what appeared to be government installations across the southwest. Weapons of various types were mounted on another wall, each meticulously maintained. Welcome to my humble abode, Frank said dryly, securing the door behind them. Now start talking, and don't bother sugarcoating whatever shitstorm you've dragged to my doorstep. Over the next 15 minutes, Sam explained their situation, the Guardian Code Titans experiments, Colonel Reed's pursuit, and the looming threat of the Harvesters. Throughout the explanation, Frank's expression shifted from skepticism to grim understanding as the pieces aligned with conspiracies he'd been tracking for years. When Sam finished, Frank turned his attention to Lyra, studying her with the analytical eye of a combat medic. That wound on your arm, some kind of energy discharge. Lyra nodded, allowing Frank to examine the partially healed injury where silvery fluid had leaked earlier. Disruption of my biomatrix from your facility's containment systems. The Guardian Code has begun healing it, but the process is incomplete. Frank's professional curiosity overrode his suspicion as he guided her to the medical area. I've got some experience with unusual physiologies. Special Forces medics see things most doctors wouldn't believe. Let's see what we can do. While Frank attended to Lyra's wound, Sam moved to the communications console, scanning the frequencies for any indication of pursuit. The military bands were alive with encrypted traffic, too much activity for a normal morning. They're mobilizing additional forces, he reported grimly. Expanding the search perimeter. We've got a few hours at most before they start sweeping this sector. Frank nodded as he worked applying a copper-infused gel to Lyra's wound. Always figured they'd come for me eventually. Just didn't expect you'd be the reason, Sam. There was no accusation in Frank's voice, just the resigned acceptance of a man who had spent decades preparing for inevitable confrontation. Government black ops hunting an alien queen, he muttered, shaking his head. And I thought I was the crazy one out here in the desert. He finished dressing Lyra's wound, stepping back to assess his work. The combination of copper gel and silver-threaded bandage had stabilized the luminescent patterns, the painful pulsing visibly diminished. You have skilled hands for a human healer, Lyra observed, flexing her arm experimentally. Frank gave a short, gruff laugh. Lady, I've patched up everything from gunshot wounds to radiation burns. Spent 3 years as a contractor for a program they didn't even bother giving a name, just a number. Saw things that would make most doctors question their sanity. He glanced at Sam. Sounds like you got pulled into something similar with this Utah mission you mentioned. Sam nodded, memories of that classified operation flooding back with new context. 1991. 8-man medical team sent to recover what they called sensitive materials from a crash site in the Utah desert. We weren't told what we were recovering, just that it was potentially hazardous and required specialized containment. He looked at Lyra. That was your ship, wasn't it? The one they shot down. Lyra's mercury eyes clouded with the memory. My diplomatic vessel. We came in peace, had been observing Earth for decades. Your government's response was unexpected. Frank moved to a hidden panel in the wall, revealing a small arsenal of weapons and equipment. If Reed's leading the pursuit, you'll need more than medical supplies. He selected several items, including a modified sidearm and what appeared to be military-grade signal jammers. This might help with those tracking devices. Won't remove them, but should scramble the signal temporarily. He tossed the jammer to Sam, who caught it with his good hand. Range is limited, maybe 5 miles. Use it wisely. As Frank prepared supplies, Sam and Lyra studied the maps on the wall, plotting a route to the Alpha contact point. It's here, Lyra said, indicating a remote location in the northern Arizona wilderness. What your government designated as an archaeological research site, it is actually where my ship's emergency beacon activated after the crash. The spatial window will open there in approximately 39 hours now. Sam traced the route with his finger, nearly 200 miles across difficult terrain, with multiple military installations and checkpoints between their current position and their destination. We'll need a vehicle, Sam said, turning to Frank. Something that can handle off-road conditions but won't attract attention. Frank's expression turned grim. Got just the thing, old Humvee I've modified over the years. Solar electric hybrid with expanded range. Military surplus, but I've removed all traceable components and registrations. He hesitated, a shadow crossing his features. But Sam, you need to understand something. The kind of heat you're bringing down, there's no coming back from this. For any of us. The silence that followed carried the weight of recognition. This was a point of no return. Sam had already crossed that line when he helped Lyra escape Titan, but Frank still had a choice. Before Sam could respond, the perimeter alarm blared to life, red lights flashing across the compound's security monitors. Frank moved with practiced efficiency, bringing up camera feeds on the main screen. 3 black SUVs had stopped a quarter-mile from the compound, disgorging tactical teams in full combat gear. Seems your friends found us sooner than expected, Frank said, grimly activating defense protocols with a series of quick commands. Metal shutters began descending over the windows, and the faint hum of an electromagnetic shield powering up vibrated through the walls. Titan security, Sam asked, moving to Frank's side to study the approaching threat. Frank shook his head. Worse. Private military contractors. I recognize the formation and equipment. These aren't just security guards, they're elite operators. X-Delta X-SEAL. Lyra joined them in the monitor, her expression darkening as she assessed the tactical situation. They're not tracking us, she said with certainty. The jammer is working. They must have identified this location through other means. Frank's laugh was harsh and without humor. They've had me under surveillance for years, Your Majesty. Probably just connected the dots when Sam disappeared from their radar near my location. He moved to a weapons locker, extracting a well-maintained M4 carbine. Hope you remember your combat training, Sam. Been a while since Desert Storm. Sam accepted the weapon, muscle memory taking over as he checked the action and ammunition. Like riding a bike, he murmured, though in truth his combat experience had been primarily as a medic. Frank seemed to read his thoughts. Focus on what you know, Sam. You were always better at keeping people alive than taking them out. He handed Sam a reinforced medical kit. Grab what you need. We're leaving in 5 minutes. Confusion crossed Sam's face. Leaving your defenses. Frank cut him off with a sharp gesture. Are a distraction at best. This place was designed to slow them down, not stop an assault team of this caliber. He moved to a concealed panel in the floor, revealing a tunnel entrance. Underground passage leads to the garage on the far side of the compound. By the time they breach the main defenses, we'll be long gone. As they gathered essential supplies, the security monitors showed the tactical team beginning their approach using terrain features for cover as they advanced methodically toward the perimeter fence. Frank worked efficiently, transferring weapons, medical supplies, and survival gear to backpacks. The tunnel's narrow single file. I'll take point, then, Her Majesty, then you covering our rear, Sam. He paused, meeting Sam's eyes directly. Once we reach the garage, things will move fast. No hesitation, no looking back. The first explosions rocked the compound as the assault team breached the outer perimeter. Frank sealed the tunnel entrance behind them, plunging them into darkness, broken only by emergency lighting along the passage floor. 100 yards to the garage, he said, his voice echoing slightly in the confined space. They'll focus on the main building first. Standard procedure. Gives us maybe 3 minutes before they realize we've gone to ground. The passage was cramped and dusty, forcing them to move in a half-crouch through the narrow confines. Lyra navigated the space with fluid grace despite the constraints, while Sam found his aging knees protesting the awkward position. Above them, the muffled sound of gunfire and explosions continued, Frank's automated defense systems engaging the assault team. Almost there, Frank called back, reaching a vertical ladder at the passage's end. Garage is directly above. I'll go first, secure the area. Frank ascended quickly, pushing open a concealed hatch and scanning the garage before signaling them forward. Lyra followed with Sam, climbing up last, his shoulder wound, making the ascent painful despite the Guardian Code's partial healing. The garage housed several vehicles, most partially disassembled, but at its center stood Frank's pride, a heavily modified Humvee with matte desert camouflage and solar panels integrated into its roof and hood. She's not pretty, but she'll get you where you need to go, Frank said, opening the driver's door. Four-wheel drive, reinforced suspension, and enough battery capacity to run silent for up to 100 miles before the gas generator kicks in. He tossed Sam a set of keys. GPS is pre-programmed with off-road routes that avoid checkpoints in population centers. Stick to those paths. Sam caught the keys but frowned at Frank's phrasing. You said you, not we. Frank's weathered face settled into grim determination as he moved to a control panel near the garage door. Someone needs to keep them busy while you make your escape. Can't exactly outrun those SUVs on the open desert. Before Sam could protest, Frank continued. This isn't negotiable, Sam. I've been waiting 20 years for a purpose worth dying for. Getting your alien queen to her destination might just qualify. The rumble of explosions grew closer. The assault team had breached the main building and would soon discover the tunnel. Frank pressed a series of buttons on the control panel, activating the garage door, while simultaneously triggering what appeared to be secondary defense protocols throughout the compound. That'll keep them occupied, he said with grim satisfaction. Multiple explosive charges, timed releases of CS gas, and a few other surprises I've been saving for a special occasion. Sam gripped Frank's shoulder, words failing him in the face of his friend's sacrifice. Frank nodded once, understanding passing between them without need for speech. Get her to the Alpha Point, Sam. Whatever she's carrying, whatever this Guardian Code is, it sounds a hell of a lot more important than one old soldier's last stand. He glanced at Lyra with newfound respect. Take care of him, Your Majesty. He's one of the good ones. Lyra inclined her head, a gesture somehow both alien and deeply regal. Your sacrifice will be remembered, Frank Wilson. When the Stellaris return, we will honor your courage. A ghost of a smile touched Frank's lips. Just make sure there's still a planet worth coming back to. He turned to the armory cabinet along the garage wall, selecting additional weapons. Now go, I'll buy you as much time as I can. Sam and Lyra climbed into the Humvee, the vehicle's electric motor humming to life with barely a whisper. As the garage door fully opened, revealing the desert beyond, Frank raised his hand in a final salute. Utah 91, he called, referencing the mission that had unknowingly connected them all 3 decades earlier. Sam returned the salute through the window, throat tight with emotion. Then Frank was gone, moving back toward the main compound weapons, ready for his final battle. The Humvee surged forward, leaving the compound behind as explosions blossomed in their wake. Sam navigated through the desert with focused precision, following the GPS route that would take them far from established roads. In the passenger seat, Lyra watched the compound recede into the distance, her mercury eyes reflecting the plumes of smoke, now rising against the morning sky. He fights to give us time, she observed quietly. His life for our mission. Sam's grip tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles white with tension. That's Frank. Always was a stubborn bastard with an oversized sense of duty. He checked the rearview mirror, watching for pursuit, even as his mind filled with memories of a younger Frank, laughing over warm beer in a desert tent, steady hands treating wounded soldiers under fire, a loyal friend in the worst of circumstances. Now sacrificing himself for a mission he barely understood on the word of a friend he hadn't seen in 15 years. They drove in silence for several miles, the Humvee's specialized suspension absorbing the rough terrain as they followed dry creek beds in ancient game trails deeper into the wilderness. The signal jammer Frank had provided hummed softly from the dashboard, its effective radius displayed on a small screen, a 5-mile bubble of electronic invisibility, temporary but essential. When they were approximately 10 miles from the compound, Sam finally allowed himself to slow slightly, checking their fuel reserves and course. The Alpha contact point is still nearly 190 miles northeast, he said, studying the GPS. At our current speed through this terrain, that's at least 10 hours of driving, assuming we don't encounter any roadblocks or patrols. He glanced at Lara, noting that her wounds seemed to be responding well to Frank's treatment. How are you holding up? Lyra was examining the Guardian code cylinder, which pulsed with stronger light now that she held it directly. Better. Your friend's understanding of metallurgical influences on bioenergetic fields was surprisingly advanced for a human. She looked up, those mercury eyes meeting his. I need to explain more about what we face, Samuel Miller, about the Stellaris, the Harvesters, and why your world is now in grave danger. Sam nodded, adjusting their course to follow a dry riverbed that offered both cover from aerial observation and relatively smooth passage. I'm listening. Lyra was silent for a moment, organizing her thoughts, the weight of millennia of history evident in her expression. The Stellaris civilization existed for over 15,000 of your Earth years. We evolved not just technologically but biologically, developing a symbiotic relationship with quantum computational matter. What you would call biotechnology, though, that term vastly undersimplifies the integration. The Humvee jostled over a particularly rough section of terrain, forcing Sam to focus momentarily on their path. When the ground smoothed again, Lyra continued. We explored hundreds of star systems, established peaceful contact with dozens of developing civilizations. Earth was simply one of many worlds we observed, promising, but volatile, not yet ready for full contact. Then the Harvesters found us. Her voice took on a harder edge, the memory clearly painful. They came from beyond our known galaxy, entities that exist as much in quantum states as physical form. They don't conquer civilizations. They consume them, absorbing knowledge, technology, consciousness itself. Entire planets left empty, populations reduced to mindless husks. We fought for centuries, developing increasingly desperate defenses. Sam processed this grim picture, connecting it to his fragmented memories of Utah. And the Guardian Code was your final defense, some kind of weapon. Lyra shook her head, cradling the cylinder with something approaching reverence. Not a weapon, a sanctuary. When it became clear we could not defeat the Harvesters through conventional means, our greatest minds created the code, a quantum biological matrix capable of storing the essential consciousness of our entire civilization. A seed from which we might one day regrow when the Harvesters had passed. The implications were staggering, an entire civilization distilled into the device he had carried in his pocket. And you came to Earth to hide it. Lyra's expression darkened. We came seeking allies. Your world was one of several where we placed guardian seeds with designated protectors like myself to ensure they remained safe until they could be retrieved. We believed Earth's technological limitations would make it invisible to the Harvesters, who focus on advanced quantum signatures. She looked out at the passing desert landscape so alien from her homeworld. We were wrong. Your military shot down my ship, captured me, took the Guardian Code. And in their attempts to understand it, to reverse engineer its capabilities, they've created the very signature that will draw the Harvesters here. The weight of this revelation settled heavily between them. Titan's experiments had inadvertently placed Earth directly in the path of an unstoppable cosmic predator. Utah 91. Sam murmured, pieces of his fractured memory realigning. My team wasn't sent to recover crash debris. We were sent to recover you. Lyra nodded, studying his face as recognition dawned. You were the one who found me first before the containment team arrived. You treated my injuries, tried to communicate. When Reed and the others came, you attempted to protect me. Her voice softened. They subdued you, subjected you to memory alteration, but not before my blood had entered your system through an open wound on your hand. Sam's mind reeled with recovered images. A crashed vessel unlike any aircraft he'd ever seen. A wounded being with luminescent skin, his attempts to provide medical aid being violently interrupted. The memory of Reed's voice, secure the specimen, terminate any witnesses. Then darkness followed by weeks of debriefing that had left his memories of the incident fragmented and distorted. They told us it was a crashed experimental aircraft, he said softly, that the pilot had been exposed to unknown radiation. A convenient explanation for my non-human characteristics, Lyra observed, easier than admitting they had captured an extraterrestrial diplomat. She touched the Guardian code which pulsed in response. What they couldn't have known was how my blood would affect your cellular structure, creating a partial compatibility with Stellaris biotechnology. It's why the code responded to you last night, why it attempted to heal your wound. A human should not be able to interact with it at all. The Humvee crested a small rise, giving them a view of the vast desert stretching before them. In the far distance, barely visible through the morning haze, a plume of dust indicated vehicles moving at high speed. We've got company, Sam noted grimly, adjusting their course to utilize a deeper wash that would provide better concealment. Might be routine patrol, might be pursuit. Either way, we need to maintain our distance. Lyra studied the dust trail with those unnervingly perceptive eyes. We require a more secure location to rest and plan. The Alpha contact point is still many hours away, and we must consider that Reed will have forces positioned there as well. It was a known crash site after all. Sam nodded, consulting the GPS for alternatives. There's a research station about 40 miles northeast Dr. Ellen Chen's outpost, according to this map. Frank had it marked as friendly. Dr. Chen, Lyra repeated, recognition in her voice. Ellen Chen was one of the scientists who studied me during my captivity. Unlike the others, she objected to the experimentation. She was removed from the project when she attempted to alert oversight committees to ethical violations. This aligned with the information on Frank's map, which had tagged her location with a note, ex-Titan researcher whistleblower potential ally. Sam adjusted their course toward the research station, constantly scanning for signs of pursuit. If she worked on the original project, she might have information about what Titan has done with the technology since then. Lyra nodded, her expression grave, and perhaps a better understanding of how their experiments may have attracted the harvesters. The quantum signature of an activated Guardian code is unmistakable across vast distances of space. The morning sun climbed higher as they continued their journey, the desert heat intensifying despite the Humvee's climate control systems. Sam felt the weight of his age in his aching joints and the persistent throb of his partially healed wound. 68 years old and on the run from his own government, helping an alien queen prevent both an invasion from space and the weaponization of consciousness transfer technology. If someone had described this scenario to him yesterday, he would have recommended immediate psychiatric evaluation. Yet here he was, his world transformed in the space of hours, racing across the Arizona desert, with the fate of two civilizations potentially riding on their success or failure. Sam Miller, who had spent 15 years in comfortable obscurity as a night security guard, now found himself at the center of perhaps the most significant event in human history. The irony wasn't lost on him. All those years watching empty hallways, he mused aloud, and the real threat was what Titan was doing behind those locked doors. Lyra studied him with those mercurial eyes that seemed to see through superficial layers to essential truths. You were never meant for insignificance, Samuel Miller. Even with altered memories, some part of you remained vigilant, remained at Titan for 15 years, watching and waiting. Her gaze returned to the desert ahead. Perhaps that was no accident. Perhaps the trace of Stellaris biology in your system created a connection to the Guardian code that even memory alteration could not sever. The sun hung high overhead as the Humvee approached Ellen Chen's research outpost. The collection of repurposed shipping containers nestled against the hillside had been designed to blend seamlessly with the landscape, visible only when you knew exactly where to look. Solar arrays gleamed on every available surface, and a small wind turbine spun lazily atop the tallest structure. Sam brought the vehicle to a stop behind a natural rock formation that concealed the main entrance. No external security visible, he noted, scanning the perimeter. Either she's not worried about visitors, or her defenses are well disguised. Lyra studied the compound with her characteristic intensity, mercury eyes gleaming in the desert light. There are energy signatures throughout the perimeter. She is already aware of our presence. As if confirming Lyra's assessment, and a speaker mounted beside the entrance crackled to life. Identify yourselves and state your business. Sam stepped from the vehicle, hands visible. Dr. Ellen Chen, my name is Sam Miller. I'm a security officer from Titan Research Institute. With me is someone I believe you've met before. He gestured toward Lyra, whose subtle luminescence was unmistakable, even in the bright sunlight. The entrance, disguised as part of the rock formation, slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Ellen Chen stood in the doorway, intelligent eyes widening behind wire-rimmed glasses. Queen Lyra, she breathed, using the alien's proper title rather than the designation Sam had heard Reed use. After all these years, Lyra acknowledged Ellen with a regal nod. You showed kindness during my captivity, Dr. Chen. One of very few. Ellen's gaze shifted to Sam, wariness replacing her initial shock. And you, Mr. Miller, Reed's man, or something else? Sam met her gaze steadily. I made my choice when I helped Lyra escape. The bullet wound in my shoulder is Reed's answer to that decision. Ellen studied them both for another moment, then gestured them inside. If you're running from Reed, you don't have much time. The entrance sealed behind them, plunging them into the filtered air of the outpost's main module. Sophisticated monitoring equipment lined the walls with a holographic display showing quantum waveform patterns at the center. You've been tracking the quantum signatures, Lyra observed, studying the display. Ellen nodded grimly. For 18 months. Since Titan's Lazarus project achieved their first consciousness transfer between subjects. She manipulated the controls, revealing detailed scans of test subjects. They've weaponized your technology, not perfectly, but enough to create something extraordinarily dangerous. Sam studied the display, recognizing elements that matched the Guardian Code's pulsing energy. Dangerous how? Ellen's laugh was bitter and short. Immortality for the elite who can afford it. Consciousness transfer between bodies. Dictators who never die just move to younger hosts. The ultimate insurance policy for the powerful. She shifted the display again, showing deep space energy readings. But that's not the worst of it. 6 months ago, I detected the first response, quantum fluctuations from beyond our solar system. Something out there noticed what Titan was doing. The Harvesters, Sam said the name, feeling strange on his tongue despite the gravity it carried. Ellen's eyes widened. You know about them? Lyra stepped forward, her presence commanding attention despite her diminutive stature. I have explained to Samuel what my people faced, why the Guardian Code was created. The Harvesters consume advanced consciousness. Titan's experiments have attracted their attention decades before your species would naturally have developed technology they would notice. Ellen nodded grimly. Based on the latest readings, a scout vessel will reach Earth's orbit within 24 hours. A larger contingent follows approximately 12 hours behind. Sam checked his watch. The Alpha contact point, the window opens in about 33 hours. If we can get the Guardian Code there in time. Elthurin was already shaking her head. Reed knows about the Alpha point. It's under constant surveillance. You'll be walking into a heavily fortified military position. The window must be accessed, Lyra stated firmly. It is the only way to transmit the Guardian Code to my people's sanctuary world, and potentially the only way to protect Earth from what approaches. She turned to Sam. The Harvesters will detect my presence and prioritize us before engaging with Earth's population. Sam absorbed this information, mind already mapping strategic options. So we're caught between Reed's forces and an alien invasion with less than 33 hours to reach a heavily guarded location. His lips curved into a grim smile that had seen too many impossible missions. Wouldn't be the first time. Ellen led them to her medical bay, where she extracted the tracking device from behind Sam's ear with surgical precision. For Lyra, she used a focused electromagnetic pulse that temporarily disabled the more complex tracker embedded in the alien queen's neural system. Reed won't just be coming with helicopters, Sam observed, selecting weapons from Ellen's surprisingly well-stocked arsenal. He'll have ground teams approaching from multiple vectors. Standard containment protocol. They were preparing to leave when the perimeter alarm blared to life. Ellen's monitors showed 3 black helicopters approaching rapidly. Sooner than expected, Sam noted grimly. Almost simultaneously, a high-pitched modulated signal pierced the air, a sound no human technology could produce. Lyra's expression tightened, the Guardian Code pulsing more rapidly in response. Harvester Scout. They've arrived earlier than predicted. The first wave is already here. Ellen activated a hidden tunnel entrance. This leads to a secondary exit on the north side of the ridge. I have a vehicle there, all-terrain solar electric. She initiated a self-destruct sequence for the outpost. I'm coming with you. My knowledge of the Lazarus Project could be vital in reaching the Alpha Point. They escaped through the tunnel just as Reed's forces began their descent toward the outpost. The underground passage was wider than Frank's, clearly designed as a primary escape route rather than a last resort. They had covered half the distance when a deep resonating boom shook the tunnel. They're not waiting for a peaceful surrender, Sam observed dryly. Ellen's expression hardened. Reed never intended peaceful anything. This became a scorched earth operation the moment he realized I had the Queen and the Guardian code. They reached Ellen's vehicle and accelerated away from the cavern entrance. Behind them, something emerged from the tunnel, a shape that defied easy description, neither fully mechanical nor organic, moving with unsettling fluidity. Don't look back, Ellen advised, navigating along a nearly invisible trail. First rule of escaping things that want to dissect your consciousness. They traversed the wilderness throughout the afternoon. Ellen's knowledge of abandoned mining networks providing routes invisible to standard monitoring. As dusk approached, they detected military patrols, establishing a perimeter around their likely routes. Reed's casting a wide net, Sam noted, studying the tactical display. He's determined not to lose us again. They took shelter in an ancient mine system as night fell, the vehicle's sensors detecting multiple aircraft searching the region. The Guardian code's blue light seemed more pronounced in the darkness, casting ethereal shadows as they powered down all non-essential systems. 26 hours until the spatial window opens, Lyra noted. The Harvester Scout has undoubtedly communicated our location. Others will converge here. They were traversing deeper into the mine system when a strange vibration passed through the tunnel, not the mechanical rumble of machinery, but something more fundamental, as if reality itself were disturbed. They're scanning, Lyra whispered, face taut with concentration. The Harvester main contingent has reached Earth orbit. The vehicle's sensors detected multiple impacts on the mountain above orbital bombardment from the Harvester ships, systematically eliminating potential hiding places. We cannot remain here, Lyra stated urgently. The entire mine system will become unstable. Ellen gunned the engine toward the western tunnel exit, only to discover Reed's forces had established a complete military perimeter outside. At the same moment, the distinctive signal of a Harvester Scout echoed through the tunnel behind them. They were trapped between two lethal forces with no apparent escape. Options, Ellen asked tersely, fingers hovering over the vehicle's controls. Sam's military training kicked in, mind racing through tactical scenarios. Neither Reed nor the Harvesters can afford to destroy the Guardian code. They both need it intact. We use that to our advantage. He quickly outlined a desperate plan. Ellen would create a diversion by detonating charges near the eastern tunnel entrance, drawing Reed's forces in that direction. Meanwhile, Sam and Lyra would use the confusion to approach the edge of the perimeter where the forest provided better cover. The Guardian code's natural energy field, enhanced by Lyra's focus, might provide enough quantum interference to slip past both human and Harvester detection systems. It's suicide, Ellen objected, though her hands were already preparing the remote detonators. Probably, Sam acknowledged with the calm acceptance of a veteran who had faced death before. But staying here definitely is. The charges detonated with spectacular effect, collapsing the eastern tunnel entrance and sending Reed's forces rushing to investigate the apparent escape attempt. In the ensuing chaos, Sam and Lyra slipped from the vehicle, making their way through the underbrush toward the perimeter's edge, while Ellen created additional diversions by triggering the vehicle's emergency protocols. They had nearly reached the perimeter when a Harvester Scout materialized before them, a shimmering construct of light and matter, with no discernible features yet radiating terrible intelligence. Lyra stepped forward, the Guardian code blazing in her hands, as she confronted the entity. I am Lyra, last queen of the Stellaris. You shall not pass. The creature advanced, tendrils of energy reaching toward the code. Sam reacted instinctively, placing himself between Lyra and the Harvester, despite knowing his weapons would likely be useless. To his shock, the Harvester hesitated, its energy patterns shifting erratically as it encountered him. Your altered DNA, Lyra realized. The Stellaris markers in your cellular structure, they confuse its sensory systems. Using this unexpected advantage, They maneuvered around the disoriented scout and slipped through a gap in Reed's perimeter during a patrol changeover. By dawn, they had put 10 miles between themselves and the mine system, traveling on foot through the rugged wilderness. The distant sound of military vehicles and occasional flashes of strange light in the sky confirmed both pursuits continued. 19 hours until the window opens, Lyra announced as they paused to rest beside a small stream. Sam examined their position on the map Ellen had provided. Alpha Point is still 40 miles northeast. We need transportation. As if answering his words, the sound of an approaching helicopter broke the morning silence. They concealed themselves as the aircraft passed overhead, not one of Reed's military transports, but a civilian news helicopter apparently investigating the unusual military activity in the region. The story must have leaked, Sam mused, an idea forming, which means civilian attention is on this area. They continued their journey, eventually reaching a small ranger station near a national forest boundary. The sole ranger on duty was monitoring news reports about military exercises in the region, oblivious to the true nature of events unfolding around him. Sam approached with the practiced ease of authority, identifying himself as a federal agent and requisitioning the ranger's vehicle for national security purposes. The official-sounding terminology and Sam's confident bearing overcame any hesitation, and within minutes they were driving toward the Alpha Point with renewed speed. The Alpha Contact Point, designated an archaeological research site in official records, was nestled in a remote valley surrounded by ancient rock formations. As they approached from a ridge overlooking the site, Sam used binoculars to assess the situation. Reed had established a comprehensive security perimeter, military vehicles, armed personnel, and what appeared to be specialized containment equipment centered around a circular depression in the valley floor. "That's where my ship crashed 30 years ago," Lyra explained softly. "The impact created a unique quantum resonance point, a thin place between dimensions where transmission becomes possible." She studied the sky with growing concern. "The spatial window will open in approximately 7 hours, but the Harvester main fleet will arrive before then." As if confirming her assessment, the atmosphere above them began to shimmer with distortions that hurt the eye to look at, directly reality itself bending as multiple massive Harvester vessels phased partially into Earth's dimensional space. "They're not fully materializing," Lyra observed, "maintaining quantum indeterminacy to avoid conventional detection and defense systems." The military forces below had noticed the distortions, their organized formations dissolving into confused activity as unfamiliar threats appeared on their sensors. Sam spotted Reed among them, issuing orders with the calm precision of a career officer, even as the world around him transformed. "Whatever else Reed might be, he's no coward," Sam acknowledged grudgingly. Their opportunity came as the Harvesters began methodically targeting Reed's defensive positions, their advanced weapons disintegrating matter at the quantum level. In the chaos, Sam and Lyra descended toward the site using natural cover and the growing darkness as camouflage. They had nearly reached the central depression when a voice called from behind them. "Hello, Sam. I've been expecting you." Reed stood alone, weapon drawn, but held at his side in a gesture that was neither directly threatening nor entirely peaceful. "You've led me on quite a chase, old friend." Sam positioned himself protectively in front of Lyra. "We're not friends, Reed. We never were. You used me, experimented on me without my knowledge or consent." Reed's expression remained impassive. "Not personal, Sam. Just necessary. Some sacrifices are required for the greater good." He gestured toward the Harvester vessels now clearly visible above them. "You see what we're facing, what I've been preparing for all these years. The Lazarus Project wasn't just about immortality for the elite, it was about preserving humanity's best minds to rebuild after what's coming." His voice carried the weight of a man who had carried an impossible burden alone. "I always knew they would come eventually. I just thought we'd have more time." "Your experiments accelerated their arrival," Lyra stated coldly. "Your tampering with the Guardian Code created the quantum signature that drew them here decades before your world would naturally have attracted their attention." Reed's composure cracked slightly, doubt flickering across his features. "Is that true?" Before Lyra could respond, the ground beneath them trembled as a Harvester beam struck nearby, disintegrating a military vehicle and its occupants instantly. Reed made his decision quickly. "Get to the contact point. Whatever you're planning, do it fast. My people will buy you time." He activated his radio, issuing new orders to his remaining forces. All units converge on Sector 7. Protect the artifact site at all costs. Engage the airborne hostiles with everything we've got. He turned back to Sam, something like regret in his eyes. This doesn't make us even Miller, but maybe it makes us human. Reed moved toward the perimeter, coordinating his troops to create a defensive ring around the depression that held the Alpha Point. Sam and Lyra descended into the circular formation, finding at its center a small area where the ground seemed to shimmer slightly, the dimensional weak point created by the ship's crash 3 decades earlier. The window will open soon. Lyra stated, the Guardian code pulsing more rapidly in her hands. But the code requires a consciousness to guide its transmission, a living conduit to direct its energy. She turned to Sam, her mercury eyes reflecting the chaotic battle now raging around them. It should have been me, but I am too damaged from years of captivity and experimentation. My neural pathways can no longer sustain the full integration. Understanding dawned in Sam's expression. You need me. Because of the Stellaris DNA in my system. Lyra nodded solemnly. The code has already begun bonding with you. It recognized your altered cellular structure from the moment you first touched it. But you must understand what this means, Samuel Miller. The integration is permanent and transformative. You will no longer be entirely human. Above them, Reed's forces fought a desperate holding action against the Harvester vessel's conventional weapons, proving largely ineffective against entities that existed partially outside normal space-time. The defensive perimeter was collapsing rapidly, with Harvester scouts beginning to converge on the depression where the Guardian Code's energy signature burned like a beacon. What exactly are we trying to do here? Sam asked, military pragmatism asserting itself even in this extraordinary situation. Lyra placed the Guardian Code in his hands, the cylinder's blue light intensifying at his touch. The code contains the consciousness seed of my entire civilization. When the spatial window opens, it must be transmitted to our sanctuary world. But in the process fully activated, it will generate a quantum disruption field that the Harvesters cannot penetrate, it essentially creating a protective bubble around this planet until they move on to easier prey. Sam weighed the cylinder in his hands, feeling its resonance with something deep in his altered DNA. The decision wasn't really a decision at all, not when weighed against the alternative. What do I need to do? Lyra positioned his hands around the code, guiding him to align with the shimmering center of the depression. Open yourself to it. Allow the code to access your consciousness. I will guide the initial integration, but after that, you must complete the bond. The world around them seemed to recede as Sam focused on the pulsing light between his palms. The cylinder's surface grew transparent, revealing intricate patterns of energy that matched the luminescence beneath Lyra's skin. As he concentrated, these patterns began flowing onto his own hands, tracing delicate networks across his aging skin that mirrored Lyra's alien biology. Reed's voice cut through his concentration, momentarily shouting orders as the perimeter contracted further under Harvester assault. Sam glimpsed the colonel directing a last stand near the edge of the depression, wounded, but still fighting with the determination of a man who had found his final purpose. Their eyes met briefly across the battlefield, an understanding passing between them that transcended their complicated history. The first tendrils of the Guardian Code's consciousness touched Sam's mind, not invasive but exploratory, ancient and vast beyond human comprehension, yet somehow familiar. Images flooded his awareness, the Stellaris homeworld with its crystal cities and quantum architecture, the centuries-long war against the Harvesters, the desperate creation of the Guardian Codes and their dispersal across the galaxy, Lyra's mission to Earth and her subsequent capture, the years of experimentation and Reed's misguided attempt to weaponize what he didn't understand. Lyra's voice seemed to come from both outside and within his mind simultaneously. The window is opening, Samuel. The code is ready for full integration. Are you prepared? Sam nodded beyond words now, as the Guardian Code's consciousness expanded through his neural pathways, transforming his perception of reality itself. The shimmering air before them split open, revealing not another physical location, but a quantum corridor linking dimensions, the spatial window that would connect Earth to the Stellaris sanctuary world. The integration accelerated Sam's consciousness, merging with the code's vast repository of knowledge and experience. His physical form began to change as well. the luminescent patterns spreading across his skin, his eyes shifting toward the mercury hue of Lyra's. The pain was extraordinary, but somehow distant, as if happening to someone else, while his true self expanded into something greater. Lyra placed her hands over his, adding her own connection to the process. "We guide it together," she said, her voice resonating directly in his transformed consciousness. "My people's past, your world's future." The Guardian Code flared with blinding intensity as the spatial window reached full manifestation. A column of blue-white energy erupted from Sam's hands, passing through the dimensional opening, while simultaneously expanding outward in concentric waves across the battlefield. Where these waves touched the Harvester entities, they recoiled as if burned, their quantum structures destabilizing on contact with the Code's protective field. Sam felt himself becoming something new, neither human nor Stellaris, but a synthesis incorporating elements of both, guided by the ancient wisdom contained within the Code. Through his expanded awareness, he perceived the successful transmission of the Stellaris consciousness seed to its sanctuary world, ensuring their civilization's survival. Simultaneously, the protective quantum field continued expanding, forcing the Harvesters to retreat from Earth's vicinity as their very existence became painful within its influence. The last thing he saw clearly through human eyes was Reed, mortally wounded, but still fighting, providing cover as the transformation completed. Then Samuel Miller, 68-year-old security guard, former combat medic, reluctant hero, ceased to exist in his previous form, becoming something greater as the Guardian Code fully integrated with his transformed biology. 6 months later, a figure stood at the observation window of the newly established United Nations Extraterrestrial Communication Division. The facility had been built around the Alpha Contact Point, now recognized as Earth's first official connection to another civilization. The figure appeared human at first glance, though closer inspection revealed subtle luminescent patterns beneath his skin and eyes of striking mercury silver that reflected the starlight streaming through the reinforced glass. Dr. Samuel Miller, as he was now known, supervised a team of scientists and diplomats preparing for humanity's formal introduction to the wider galactic community. His unique status as both human and something more made him the perfect bridge between worlds, a living embodiment of the cooperation that had saved two civilizations from extinction. "The Stellaris representatives will arrive through the spatial window in approximately 3 weeks," he explained to the assembled team. His voice carried the same graveled quality it always had, though now layered with harmonics that hinted at his transformed nature. "They are eager to establish formal relations and share appropriate technologies to help Earth prepare for eventual Harvester return." A young scientist raised her hand hesitantly. "Dr. Miller, the protective field is weakening. Current projections suggest it will dissipate completely within 5 years. What happens then?" Sam, or the being that had once been Sam, smiled with the patient wisdom of someone who had access to millennia of accumulated knowledge. "By then, Earth will have integrated enough Stellaris defensive technology to protect itself. The field was never meant to be permanent, only a shield behind which your civilization could prepare." Later, alone in his office, Sam studied the holographic display showing the quantum resonance patterns of the spatial window. As he often did in moments of solitude, he addressed the presence he sometimes sensed within the facility's advanced computer systems. "They're making remarkable progress, Lyra, adapting to the knowledge far faster than either of us anticipated." The nearest screen flickered briefly, displaying patterns that mirrored the luminescence beneath his skin. No audible response came, but Sam felt the familiar connection, the quantum entanglement that linked him to what remained of Lyra's consciousness after her physical form had dissipated during the code's activation. Not truly gone, but transformed and distributed throughout Earth's developing quantum network, becoming a guardian of a different kind. Sam touched the screen gently, the memories of their brief but profound connection still vivid despite his transformation. "You once said I'd never survive a night with you," he murmured, with a hint of his old humor. "But I did, and in a strange way I think you did too." Outside his window, Earth continued its daily rotation, its population largely unaware of how close they had come to annihilation, or the sacrifices made to save them. But in the quiet halls of the new facility, the work continued, preparing humanity for its next evolutionary step and its rightful place among the stars, guided by a guardian who understood both worlds because he had become something new that incorporated the best of each. Samuel Miller, once a forgotten security guard, now the bridge between civilizations, turned back to his work, the luminescent patterns beneath his skin pulsing gently with the promise of a future that neither humans nor Stellaris could have achieved alone.